you on a personal note before the events of December 10, 2005. You
Okay.
definitely had aspirations, you had your dreams. So while you were growing up, can you just share with us what life was for you, particularly as you lived in Aba before you moved to Port Harcourt? How was child life for you growing up?
I was an only child for 10 years before my little sister was born. So I had all their attention, and I was very particularly close to my mom. So,
Hello, everyone. This is the DEBOTAIWO Talkshow, also available on all podcast platforms as Conversations with Debo. And of course, today we have an amazing personality today. On the show, I am so honored and excited to have a chat with someone who has defined resilience and someone who has been able to inspire a lot of millions of people around the world on redefining their faith. I'm talking about the one and only Kechi Okwuchi, a plane crash survivor, but more importantly, a finalist on American God's Talent, a motivational speaker, and an author of a book. Right? Maybe she's got more to write about. You're welcome to the DEBOTAIWO Talk Show, Kechi.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. We've been planning to do this for a while, so I'm happy that we finally can.
I know,
So,
right? I know things like this would definitely happen at the best of times. Yeah. So, but I'm really glad and I'm really excited to have you on the platform.
thank you.
Yeah, you're
Happy
welcome.
New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year to you as I'm seeing you on this face value for
Yeah, it is
in
first time.
2025. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So we'll just get into it real quick. I wanted to find out about you on a personal note before the events of December 10, 2005.
Okay.
You definitely had aspirations, you had your dreams. So while you were growing up, can you just share with us what life was for you, particularly as you lived in Aba before you moved to Port Harcourt? How was child life for you growing up?
My childhood was very happy, very joyful. I had a lot of just fun and freedom as a child. My parents were very loving and very present. And I was an only child for 10 years before my little sister was born. So I had all their attention. And I was very particularly close to my mom. So, people used to call me Harappa because she's carrying me everywhere with her. And we used to go everywhere together. I loved spending time with her as a kid. And yeah, I would say that my parents fostered a very warm environment for me and very familial too. It was very focused on family relationships. So I was very close to my cousins as well. So, and on both sides. So I really enjoyed that. So despite being an only child, I never was really alone. But being alone for, most of my childhood, when I'm at least at home with my parents, did help me develop some certain, I guess, hobbies that are considered more solo. So, things like playing video games before, the era of, playing online started, and reading books, playing Barbie by myself, and watching lots of movies, and just a lot of things that are solo activities. I really nurtured those things as a child, and I really enjoyed that too. Also, writing was a big thing for me, but more in high school. But
Okay.
yeah, I had a really, really fun time as a child, I would say. So when I look back on those memories, it's usually with happiness and with pleasure because it brings a smile to my face. So I'm grateful to my parents for that.
Mm. Of course, I mean, your parents did definitely do a very great job nurturing you, and I think your sister's name is Tara, right? Right.
Yes, Chidi Tara. Yeah,
Okwuchi, yeah.
yeah.
So they did a very great job nurturing you guys, and we'll definitely deep dive into all of that in a couple of minutes from now. Of course, we just talked about how your upbringing was, but
Hmm.
after the event of December 10, 2005, and for those who will be watching this, I want to assume everybody who's saying this, I've heard about this story before. There was a plane crash, and Kechi was involved in the plane crash, and she was one out of the two survivors from the plane crash.
Yes.
How did your the upbringing that you had, how did it shape, or what role did your family members play in getting you, out of that dark moments that you experienced at the time?
I think very significant, extremely significant. I mean, the fact that I had that bond with my family and including my extended family, it played a very significant role in how I was able to heal, not
Mm,
just physically, but also emotionally,
mm,
psychologically, spiritually, especially.
mm,
I think the closeness that I had with my mom, most specifically, was what had the biggest impact
mm,
because that closeness is the reason why I'm here today. Her presence from the beginning up until this moment I'm here speaking to you has been like it was pivotal at the time when things were at their worst, but overall has been the biggest contributor to the person I am today. I
mm,
think presence at that very pivotal time is what has allowed me to become a fully independent and whole person from the
mm,
inside out because of the kind of care that she gave me and attention that she gave me at the time when I needed that the most. So there's a lot to be said for, of course, like the medical part of things. Without the doctors and the hospital care and the surgeries, I would not be here. But without my mother's care and her love and attention and my family's care and support, I would be a different Kechi. So I would be alive for sure, but I don't know who that person might have been.
mm,
So I attribute all of the way that I am right now to the fact that the people that I cared about were there for me at my most difficult moments. And the accident happened when I was a teenager, which is arguably the most I want to say most conflicting time for human beings as
mm.
teenagers were very we're in the middle of, not quite children, but not quite adults. And that moment of time is like the most crucial for growth, especially
100%.
emotional growth, mental growth. So I think it's a testament to the kind of people that were around me that I was able to navigate being a teenager that was also a burn survivor, really. So, yeah, I would say, long story short, they played a very significant role in bringing me out of a very dark place as wholly as possible.
That's really evident from this book. Again, for people
Oh,
looking
my
at it,
book.
she's an author. She wrote
Oh,
the book
thank
More Than My
you.
Scars. So if you haven't seen this, if you haven't if you've not heard about this, you probably want to read this. This is a very inspirational book.
Thank you so much,
You
everyone.
would have at least one or two lessons to pick from this book.
Wow.
I have picked a lot of lessons from it as well. It was
Yeah,
really interesting. It was emotional reading the book, but it was a great inspiration as well.
thank
All
you.
right. For sure, you definitely described your mother as
Yeah,
well. All of this, like you just said right now, you described that even in more details, in very glowing words in this book.
yeah,
And something that fascinated me when I was reading the book, I think at the point when you were now able to regain your voice,
yes.
started talking, you did tell your mom about an incident that happened in secondary school back then, uh,
Uh-huh.
about you being entangled with a guy. Like you shared your first kiss moments with your mother.
Yes, I did tell her that. I told her
And,
everything.
and, and then you even went a step further that she shouldn't bother about the other part because
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows how much uh, closeness that you had with your mom
Yeah.
at the time. And obviously,
I
she
think
still,
I surprised her a lot during that time, I think, with the things I said.
when I read that part, I laughed. I'm like, oh my God, this has been a very, bonding moment for you and mom.
Yeah, it was. It was.
But again, recovery process from the events that you narrated in this book was definitely challenging.
Yeah.
How did you find the courage to revamp yourself? I mean, you were 16 when this happened. Some other people, it might have just, it might have taken them down completely. Like your
Mm.
self-esteem, that's what I'm particular about. Like, how are you able to rejig your self-esteem and turn out to be who you are today?
Hmm. This one is a little bit of a tough question for me usually because I don't want to, make it seem like I'm like there's two parts to it. So first part is the way that I was made, the way I am, just my normal disposition as a human being at the
Mm-hmm.
time. I think as a 16-year-old at that time, I was pretty grounded in some things that I think
Mm-hmm.
matter. And I had a good sense of self, a good sense of my worth as a human being, my value as a person that went beyond what society might say of me and my value.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that that part of me was nurtured by my parents.
Mm-hmm.
They were my first line of confidence boosters from childhood. So by the time I was a teenager, I you really couldn't tell me anything that my parents hadn't already told me. They
Mm-hmm.
were the ones that were the most like encouraging and motivating and like of course they care about grades like any other Nigerian parent would,
Mm-hmm.
but they always made sure to let me know that they didn't think that my value was based on how well I did in school. They made me feel like I had value, that my value is a result of many different factors, some of
Mm-hmm.
which I may not have found at that time yet, as a 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would say my parents first. They definitely boosted my self-confidence in a way that I think influenced how I was able to react to this thing that had changed me so drastically. So they solidified certain things about who I thought I was at that age before something so horrible happened, and would make me face a very judgmental world that might try to tell me how to feel about myself. So I would say my parents had a role in that first. Second thing was definitely my faith. I think it's important to note that, at the time the accident happened, while I was a Christian, I was not necessarily a person that would be able to say I had a close relationship with God, a personal relationship with God. That was something that developed over time from maybe months after I became a patient in the first hospital. And I think that my growing knowledge and closeness to him at that time helped me understand that my physical appearance had to take a back seat. And it was okay for it to take a back seat because there were more important things like my health and my just living. But then also to understand that, like, I don't have to define myself by standards that I no longer adhere to. Like, I don't adhere to the normal standards of beauty anymore. And I never will just because of what has happened to me. And I had to understand that that's okay because value of a human being is measured way beyond their physical. And I think I say that it's God because the way that God was taught to me, he was a being that didn't care about the physical. He was a being that expressed throughout his word that the intrinsic things are what matter. He likes qualities and virtues over how you look physically. And I was being taught that this was the being that created us and made us who we are and loves us infinitely. So it just made sense to me at the time to tie my self-worth to this non-human, because human beings, even your parents, even your family, people are judgmental and are not consistent. But one thing about God and what we know about him is that he is ever the same. And so if he loves you, he loves you. There's never going to be like the love is never going to be qualified. The love is the love that he has. And so that means that if he feels like physical is less important than intrinsic stuff, then that's going to be how he feels about human beings that he created for eternity. So I could trust in that belief, in that point of view that he had of us, his creation, more than I could trust human beings. And I feel like that combined with the way that my parents had raised me to be confident kind of created this fusion situation where you couldn't tell me anything, basically. I felt like once I could see beyond my physical being important, then the whole world opened up to me because now I didn't have to bother conforming. I didn't have to worry about doing anything physically that I don't want to do. It will never be based on what people want me to do. It would always be based on what I want to do, how far I want to take things. And then I had a support system that validated that feeling inside me. So I had people around. It's one thing to believe that, but then when you have people around you that are always telling you like whatever you want to do, we're behind. It makes you feel even more encouraged that you're doing things the right way, that you're the way that you decided to live your life. It's a good way. It's a rational and sensible way, and it works, you know. So I think that that was it really. I had so much encouragement to just think the way that I thought, and approaching life in that way is also easier too because you don't have to worry about other people's feelings and well, not feelings, other people's
Opinion.
perspective, like,
Oh,
opinions, yeah, of
perspective.
you, of your physical, yeah, when you're living your life. So that way I could still have fun and still crack jokes and have my sense of humor and be myself. I didn't have to change just because the accident changed me physically because I didn't change on the inside. And so I had to just trust that when I meet people, I can they can give me a chance to show them who I really am beyond my physical appearance. And so that's pretty much how I've just lived my life. And I have to say, so far, the results have been pretty good. 99.9% of the time, my experiences with human beings have been very positive, or at least just neutral. But I can count how many negative experiences I've had based on my physical appearance. On one hand, and I'm grateful for that because it's been more than 16 years since the accident. So, that's a lot of time for a lot of bad things to happen. So,
Mhm.
but they happen. So I think I'm on the right path. I think it's okay.
1000%. I mean, your parents did lay a very solid foundation in how to overlook what the world would judge someone's as it concerns appearance. And I think
Yes,
they did a very fantastic job okay, so to your point, you didn't have to switch your attitude. So
exactly.
after the accident, I think you had a few friends come visit you. And now
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
if you were at the hospital or if you were back home in Nigeria, and then you went past the mirror and then you made a snide remark about
Yes, I know
yourself,
about myself.
about how you look. And then this person was like, this Kechi has not even changed. Why am I even feeling very good? You know, I mean, that just kind of summarizes exactly what you're trying to say. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's I wish a lot of people would be able to have this kind of mindset on how to feel about themselves. That way
Mm.
there won't be so much pressure to how would I put it now? There'll be so much pressure to make people feel in a type of way just because you want to
Yeah.
get acceptance socially.
Yes. Yeah. Like to conform to
Yeah,
like
exactly.
to what people feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should be versus what you really want to be or how you really want to look. Yeah.
It's a really, really good perspective to have. And I hope that this changes a lot of stuff for some people who will be
I
watching this.
hope so too. I hope
Yeah.
so.
In the book, again, Kechi is an author, if you guys don't know already, More Than My Scars, very inspirational book. You did mention that your mom was definitely the rock pillar. She was the reason in fact, I think at some point you stated it explicitly, like apart from God, she was the reason why you're alive. You survived that tragic incident at that time. But you then narrated in your book that you had a dream
Mm.
that you saw like an Harry Potter character.
Yes. Yeah. That was so
Yeah.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to go is, so obviously you already said that before now.
Yes.
Your Christianity, it wasn't as rock solid, but God was telling you to rely on yourself, to
Yes.
pray more. How do you think that event shaped your spirituality after that specific dream?
That was it was a very weird, it was a very weird dream. Also because of the character in the dream. I didn't even, after like the first time it happened, like when it happened, initially I didn't really know how to take it and I didn't know how seriously to consider it because what a way to like give me a much needed message, but I was taught that sometimes when things happen, like you sometimes you sit up and you just kind of like observe. And this was one of those times, especially because of what was going on in my life at the time and how I was feeling physically and mentally. So it was a message, and it was almost like a wake up call. It was like someone was telling me, like, you need to like get your act together. Like, you
Mm.
need to get your act together, or like you're gonna spiral. And I really needed to. I needed a way to, like, something that would let me listen to this message, because at that time I was definitely struggling with even giving God any time because of how badly the
Mm.
effects of the accidents were affecting me at the time. The more I healed, the worse my feelings became, because the more I healed, the more alive I was, the
Mm.
more I understood how, like, the gravity of what had happened to
What
me.
had happened?
The
Mm.
more alive I was, the more aware I was of just how injured I was. The
Mm.
more alive I was and more aware I was, the more I realized this is not going to be, oh yeah, once you're done in the hospital, you go back to your regular life. Regular life was moving further and further away, the more aware I was of how bad this was. And so my mind, my mentality was getting very desperate and frustrated and scared,
Mm.
because I was now feeling like, how long am I going to be in this situation? Oh my God, like high school. What about like the plans I had for after like high school? What about my friends? What about like just anything normal?
Mm.
Like when will I have actually be able to be doing anything normal? I couldn't at that time. There was no way to envision a moment like this right now happening. It
Mm.
was so much. It wasn't even an imagining. I couldn't even dream of this kind of moment.
Mm.
And in those days, my mom would just tell me, Kechi, you will look back one day. Believe you me. Like, I know that it sounds like something people just say, but one day this will be a memory, and you will smile and you will shake your head and you will be like, wow, I can't believe how far I've come. That I just need to trust her that that is what is going to happen. And I just didn't understand how she could say that while looking at my situation, because I would be like, how? Like, I could not envision that. So I think I was very resistant at that time, to any message about God, especially because I'd also just learned about, like, how bad the accident had been and how many lives it had taken. So I was in this like turmoil internally, learn about this God that was supposed to be so good, but allowed 60 kids to die.
Mm.
And my parents were doing everything they could, my family, my grandma, to just pray for me, to talk to me about God, to teach me about God. My mom was working so hard. Like, I made it tough for her. She would go back to her family. She would say, see what Kechi is saying. I don't know what to say. And then they would pour into her, and then she would come back and pour into me. Of course, I realized this after the facts,
That's
but
right.
like that was what was happening. And I remember after I had that dream, I knew something had to change, and it was a moment of realization and a moment of also kind of like frustration, because I realized I was standing in my own way of how things could get better.
Mm.
So I was feeling stuck, and it was my fault essentially. That's how I felt at first. I felt like God was saying, you're feeling this way because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So it put responsibility on my head for the first time since the accident happened, But so far it'd been like, nothing, this all happened to you, Kechi, But now I was being told to take responsibility for something.
Mm.
And it was of my prayer life, my relationship with God. He was telling me that it was something I had to start nurturing myself. My
So,
mom had done a lot, but there's only so much another person can do. There's a lot of internal work that has to happen, and that cannot be done by anybody but the actual individual. So I
mm.
was being urged to start taking some responsibility in my own healing and in my own life, and in how things are going to go moving forward, because now for sure I was not going to die, but
Mm.
now what was coming into the picture was determining what kind of quality of life I was going to allow myself to have, and if God was going to be a part of it. So yeah, it was definitely a wake up call to start just trying to talk to God on my own and not relying on just my parents' prayers, my mom's prayers, my aunt, my grandma, my dad. I had to like start actually like talking to him directly and
Mm.
not be so angry at him because I was angry, because I just kept on feeling like, if you're so great, you've already proven you can save lives. You saved my life, you saved that other lady's life. Why wouldn't you save other people's lives? It doesn't make sense to me because you clearly can. So that was like my major struggle, but I had to like understand that my anger would be there consistently if I don't talk to him and try to figure this out. So I think that was like that dream led to me starting to take my prayer life a little more seriously, and starting to take some responsibility for how my life was going to be moving forward. That was like my wake up call, I think. So, yeah, it was a very interesting time, especially and very peculiar, to have that wake up moment with Harry Potter. Like, it was just like, okay. But I think, God will use whatever he thinks will make you listen and make you look and make you focus and notice. And of course, that was like a major
Major
interest in me at the time, still is. So yeah, yeah, that's what that was.
I'm glad that the dream was able to inspire you or encourage you to seeing things from a different perspective,
Yeah,
and of course, strengthening your relationship with God, which who is the supreme being and who's majorly responsible for why most of us are alive today,
exactly.
despite whatever that we might have done in the past. So, but we give God glory that things have actually turned out better than you were saying prior, that you even imagined at the time. We would
Thank you.
switch it up a little bit, but before we switch it up, I wanted to find out. So obviously, you were, I would say, a lot of people, had this support for you. Like there was, prayer support. A lot of people were looking forward to the delivery, especially as you narrated in this book again. Kechi is an author, More Than My Scars. It's yeah. So talking about relationships now. So I have this question. It's a double barrel question.
Okay.
So first off, you did have in Nigeria, you had fundraising support from
Yes.
people like Yimi Somachi and the MD of Shell, and a lot of people came around to support you
Yeah.
and the family as you had surgeries in South Africa. That definitely is a testament of how much of a good person you must have been, especially to your friends who, raised the fundraising part. That's my interpretation of what happened in the first leg. However, when you got to the States, I think it was maybe during your bachelor's program, you did
Yeah.
focus essentially only on bachelor's program, and then at this time you neglected relationships
Yes,
in a
I did.
sort of way that you felt that impacted you in getting jobs.
Yes.
How would you describe, having to be in that fix? So at one point,
Yeah.
relationships, helped you, and at the other point, you felt like, oh, you were lacking in,
That's
relationships.
a very interesting question, actually. I've never heard that's really nice. Interesting. I think with the first one, it was the relationships I had with these people that made them feel like they wanted to do something good for me and to
100%.
help me for sure. Um, but I think, yeah, it's what the I guess the contrast in those two situations would be that these were people that I knew prior to the accident.
Mm-hmm.
Have to foster anything new.
Mm-hmm.
Those were that situation, that fundraiser that raised money for like my continued like surgeries and everything. That fundraiser was done by people who were people that I loved and cared about prior to the accident happening. So after the accident happened, I didn't really have to do anything special or new to foster or create a relationship with them. It already existed. These were people that I already loved and already loved me. And by virtue of that already existing love, they did this good thing for me. The fundraiser that happened after I became a graduating, bachelor's degree holder, and that fundraiser went towards my master's program. And that was a fundraiser that happened because while I was in my undergrad, I didn't do any internships and I didn't make any efforts to do anything besides focus on my studies. And I say that it's different from the last fundraiser situation because I struggled with forming and creating new bonds post accident.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, and it was definitely something, and that I realized while writing the book that while I was writing and analyzing different things, I realized that that was definitely some kind of traumatic response from the accident. I didn't want to know any new people because of what had happened to a lot of the people that I already knew that had passed. I felt that I was good with whatever I already had. So the effort to make new relationships, to form new bonds felt unnecessary because you just never know what would happen to people. And the more people you care about, then the more you have to lose. That's just the facts, you know. Of course, it doesn't mean that we should withdraw and not form relationships, which is what I was doing at the time. But it's definitely the reason why. So I think it was very interesting because during that, like having to face the fact that like this happened because I refused to like have any kind of bond with anyone. You know, it was definitely an eye-opening situation, but not one that I realized at the time. This is
Mm,
something that like you saying it now has like made me realize, because at the time I just thought, you know, I just didn't make, you know, good choices as a as an undergrad student. But then the reason I didn't make that particular kind of choice was because I didn't want to know anyone, anything like deeper than surface level relation. I mean, of course, I had friends, but they were mainly classmates. You know, they were acquaintances. Nothing really developed past school,
mhm,
and so I think that yeah, that's definitely something that had I been a little more open to being to forming bonds, new bonds with people post accident, I probably would have had my head more out of my books, looking around,
mhm,
and formed like networks that could have helped me, and not had me having to resort to raising money so quickly for my MBA program. I would have had a chance to work first, build up money, and then do an MBA program like most people do, like maybe like after 5 years of working.
mm,
So but I'm really grateful that despite that, there were people that rallied to actually make that MBA happen for me, because that MBA ended up really changing my life. Not only because during that program something significant happened. I mean, during like the MBA program, another program happened in that situation. But then graduating with that program, I was much more of a people person, by the
mhm.
time I graduated. And so I formed relationships that did lead me to, landing like a corporate job. So like this is a very good point that you brought up. I've never actually made that connection before.
That connection, yeah. It was just more like oh, like there was a little bit of a twist there. Like, okay, I
Yeah,
need I need
very
to
interesting.
put it like that so that I get you to. Okay. So in about 3 minutes, so that I can put up another this is gonna last in about 5 minutes. So maybe in 3 minutes I was gonna ask you one question, and then we'll do like a second round and then ask you the rest of the questions. You rejected signing up for disability services when you migrated to the state.
Yeah.
What was your reason behind the decision, and how has it shaped your outlook on independence? Just in about 3 minutes.
Honestly, that was a decision I made because I had to look at myself honestly and see if if me accepting this service would be me being complacent.
Mm,
I knew after being a patient in Shriners with after moving to America that there were people that were burned like me, but in much worse conditions.
mm,
And I got a lot of perspective becoming a patient here, because I realized that out of all these burn survivors, even though mine looks pretty bad physically, it's all surface. I
mm,
maintain all my limbs. I have all my hands, my legs, I had the ability to, with surgery, help of surgery, do most things myself. So I didn't feel it would be right for me to use a service that I didn't really qualify for, even though I look like I might, because that's
mhm,
why it was offered to me. But
mhm,
the reality of it all was that I was able-bodied, and I couldn't lie to myself that I was able-bodied. And at that time, I was very much into not doing anything that would make God upset, or
mhm,
make him feel like, I don't want to do anything that will make me feel guilty down the line, because I see people every day with wheelchairs and with other disabilities that are like legitimate, and I felt like just because I look like it, like I have a disability,
mhm,
and of course that makes me want to advocate for people with disabilities as well, because I will use that opportunity to do that. Doesn't mean that I have to benefit from those services
mhm.
and take that away from people who actually need it, because I
Right.
felt like, I mean, I'm walking everywhere, I'm doing everything. Eventually they're going to realize I'm not disabled. So I didn't want to like, take on something that I would have to explain later, basically. So yeah, that was really my reason behind this.
That's a really impressive reason, because a lot of people wouldn't have thought about it this way that you're saying it. Most people would have, maybe other people might have felt like, oh, let me take this opportunity, let's make some money out of this and stuff like that. So I thought that was really remarkable. It shows the kind of um, I'm running out of words now, but just the kind of moral value that you have.
I see that I have. Thank you. I
Really,
tried.
all right, that sounds good. So I think I would pause this and we'll log in and then ask you the next set of questions. Is that okay? Thank you.
Yeah.
So
All right,
just
sure. I also am very careful with alcohol. I do drink, but like I'm very careful to do it. Like I'm careful about the company in which I do it. I'm also careful about the amount because I don't ever want to get to a place where people are telling me what I did and I don't remember. I that's one of the things I
again,
hate.
how did you discover your passion for singing, and how has it helped you, or how did it help you cope, and then snowballed into how you got into American Got Talent?